Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Aulet. I'm from the United States, as you can probably guess, and I'm from MIT. So I first of all have to say congratulations. I know this shirt doesn't really fit, Antonio. Once upon a time, it might have fit, but I'm in the real estate business now, as we say. But I got to, Carlos, this is just awesome. To have this conference, and I didn't understand the Spanish stuff, no hablo español, but I could tell the slides. And to combine hackers, hustlers, and hipsters that's the future. That's the future. That's how you build great companies. And to be able to do this just makes, to see Carlos do this just makes me so proud. Carlos, you better start the clock, because I'll talk forever if you don't start that clock. I'm not Puerto Rican, I'm Irish. So first of all, I think the whole concept of hacker, hustler, and hipster is the most important thing that's going on right now. The combination, you can have hackers, and by themselves, they're good. You can have hustlers. By themselves, they're good. You can have hipsters, and by themselves, they're useless. But you know it, hipsters. You know it. But I think that when you see these great companies like an Apple, like a Google, or if you go to New York City and you see these startups that are coming now, or San Francisco, what you see is the combination of great technology, or even good technology, someone who's really getting out there and doing the business side, and great user experience. User experience is the thing right now. So love your hipsters, all right? Even without you, they're useless. I'll insult everybody, don't worry. So I have to say, I feel great. I came here from California before I got here, and last night I got to eat at Morton's Steakhouse, a truly Puerto Rican experience. It's right over here, right? And then I got to bed early, and I got up this morning, and I had a good night's sleep for the first time in like 2 weeks. And I went out and I went running, and I had some fun in Puerto Rico, and I worked out, and I just feel great now. I feel like I can be a hacker, a hustler, and a hipster all at once here, so bear with me. The other thing I just want to say is this conference is getting started, and I think that you all here will remember this time as being at the first H3 conference. I think you're going to see this start to grow over time. We're just talking about, did I do something wrong?
Not yet.
How am I supposed to change the slides? Like that, okay.
Thank you.
Don't you have like a remote clicker? Okay. So I think you're going to remember you all being here at the first conference, and next year it's going to be bigger, and now we just had one at, someone came out of our class. It's called Inbound Marketing Conference. It's now up to 10,000 people. And that's because entrepreneurship is becoming huge. And that's really what I want to talk about. Why is an academic up here? So first of all, let me clarify, I'm an academic by accident. I'm an entrepreneur by design. I had an engineering degree, a fake engineering degree, because I got it from Harvard. And then I played professional basketball, which was equally useless. And then I worked at IBM for 11 years. And at IBM, I learned all about like technology and managing people and things like that. And I also saw the beginning of the personal computer revolution. I joined IBM in 1981. And I saw the Bill Jobs and the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs and the Mitch Kapors. And it was incredible. It was incredible. But there's nothing less incredible going on right now when you think about what's going on mobile platforms, when you see what's happened with Uber. There's just so many people out there now who are changing the world. So, by the way, if you tweet to me at this, I will see it on my big iPhone 6 Plus right here, and then I'll answer your questions. And I would love to do that. I want to make this interactive. So I said entrepreneurship is not a fad. Entrepreneurship is absolutely here to stay. You all in this room, unless you're an old white guy like me, will probably be working at a startup a few times the rest of your life. If you have kids, your kids almost certainly will be working in startups. Entrepreneurship is where the jobs are. Entrepreneurship is where the jobs are. When I first started running the center, I don't even know if I need this thing. I do need it. Okay. I'm from New York, so I'm really loud and obnoxious. So just be warned. Thank you. But that's where the jobs are. The jobs are not being created by governments. They're not being created by NGOs. They're not being created by big companies. The net jobs that are being created in every new economy, we know it in the United States, we've done the research, comes from new companies, new companies. And that's why startups are so important. And that's why when you saw in the presidential election, Obama and Mitt Romney, remember him? Talking about entrepreneurship like it was just the most beautiful thing in the world. They were rushing to who could be more about entrepreneurship. And you see that in governments. Just over in London, David Cameron, who wouldn't know an entrepreneur if it hit him in the head, embraces, you know him. This guy went to Oxford his whole life and has been a government servant. He loves entrepreneurship. And it's not because he loves entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship, because he knows that's the future. And if they want their economy to grow, if they want to provide opportunities for their citizens, they need to embrace entrepreneurship. So it is not going away. It's not some sort of fad. But the question is, do people understand it? And what I just want to say here is that Carlos was talking about at the beginning, think big. And I just tweeted out this thing this morning called hit it hard, hit it hard. When you start a company, you need to have ambition. And you may want to start a company that's just a local IT service company. You might want to do a local design firm. That's great, that's great. But if you want to change the world, you got to hit it hard. You got to have ambition. You got to be over on this side. You got to stop thinking just about Puerto Rico. You got to think about bigger markets. There's this country over to your left here. It's called the United States. They got a lot of money. There's 350 million people there. Can you produce a product that will go into that market and dominate a market segment, and then go to other markets throughout the world? So this is what I'm going to focus. Oops. It's an entrepreneurial venture. This is what I'm going to focus on, is the one on the right. And that's, how do you produce these high-growth startups? How do you get something that's innovative that will allow you to move beyond Puerto Rico? Because that's hitting it hard. And that's what I want you to think about. How can you raise your sight line to increase your ambition? So the question is, we've talked about why you need entrepreneurship. The other thing that I'm just going to go quickly by, and we can debate this in the Q&A session if you're interested. You won't win, but can entrepreneurship be taught? Can entrepreneurship be taught, or is it just something you're born with? There's some sort of gene that's an entrepreneurship gene. That's bullshit, all right? There's no entrepreneurship gene. There's no data that shows that people who are born from entrepreneurial parents are more likely to be entrepreneurial than people who aren't. My parents weren't entrepreneurial at all. They were just so happy I had a job. But that can be taught. And the data, if you don't like that, think of people who have been entrepreneurs. They get better each time they're an entrepreneur. That's what happened to me. My first company is called Cambridge Decision Dynamics. And if you Google it, you'll find out very quickly it's in deep stealth mode. That means it's not around. It failed. Then the next one, Sensible, much more successful. The third one, super successful. Now, my intelligence didn't increase throughout that process. What I did is I learned how to become an entrepreneur. It's just like a sport. Like the first time you play, you're finding your way. Second time, third time, you get better. That's what it is. So the question isn't, can you learn entrepreneurship? The question is, can we teach it? And the answer is, we must teach it, and we can teach it. The real question is, how do we teach it? And that's really what I want to talk about. Because today, that's my mission, is how can we teach entrepreneurship at a scalable level to help change the world. So what we have today is the demand for entrepreneurship is going through the roof. Through the roof. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. You know, at universities, you see numbers from 20% of the people coming in to over to 33%, to even more than that who want to be entrepreneurs. This is a cataclysmic change. As little as 7 years ago, not many people wanted to be entrepreneurs. Today, it's more popular than being an accountant, a lawyer. That's a good thing. It's as popular as become a doctor. It's now perceived by young people as being a potential profession, career path for them. Yet, do we have the infrastructure to support that? Well, the demand's going through the roof. Then can we up the supply of quality entrepreneurship education? And the answer is no. We can't do that with the way we're doing it right now. It's a real problem. Because if you're going to start a company, you're going to start a ride sharing for taxis. Someone else is going to start a water purification company. Someone else is going to start enterprise software. Someone else is going to do a digital content for Hollywood. These things are all so different that you need to understand the context with which in they are. So there's contextual, there's experiential element to it. You need mentorship. All that stuff makes it very hard to teach it. And the other problem here is that there's not a big body of knowledge in entrepreneurship. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. There's not a lot of scholarly work out there in the field of entrepreneurship. There's a lot of unscholarly work that's not backed up by data. But if you were in an academic institution, you want to get tenure. And to get tenure, you need to go to get clean data sets to compare this to that. And the problem is, it's really hard to do that in entrepreneurial ventures. Because the data in one, if it was clean and they kept it, can you compare that to another one? And it's really, really hard to do that. So people have migrated to things like finance or big companies or things like that, not anticipating this demand. Now, there is some out there, and we need to leverage that, but there's not nearly enough. And the last part about it that makes this scary is that it's easy to fake entrepreneurship education. It's easy to fake entrepreneurship education. I know, I did it. You get out there and you give a talk and you say, it's like basketball. Get up early, try hard, embrace failure, know your competition better. Cliche, cliche, cliche. Not really a structured type of thing. And that's not teaching people how to be successful. So there is some value to what we're going to talk to that, and I don't want to belittle that. Entrepreneurship is about inspiration plus the skills after that. And the storytelling can help in that, but let's not confuse that with education. And you see, Carlos was talking about it, and this is what we talk about at MIT. It's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy. If all the fish are swimming this way, are you willing to swim that way? Will you be different? And most societies, that is not embraced. That is not embraced. This spirit of a pirate. Yet that's one of the reasons that makes MIT so successful. We were the other school. We were the one that was the immigrants and immigrants' kids. So we had to do things differently. And we do. We embrace this thing called hacking, which most people think is a criminal behavior. The English call it creative irreverence. But it's hacking is what we call it. We have a dean that issues etiquettes of hacking. We have a museum of hacking. We have a book of hacking. And what hacking is doing something that kind of disrupts the system. It's you're the attacker taking on the defender. The one you might have seen is called Taking Down the House, or the movie was called 21. It was the MIT blackjack team bringing down the house. That was an MIT team with MIT on campus organizing it. But that's the mentality that we have. And that mentality does help you, and you can get inspired by that. But if you just do that and you rush out into battle with that without the proper training, without the proper weaponry, you're going to get slaughtered. And that's what concerns me today, is that we inspire all these people to be entrepreneurs, and then we send them out there, and they're going to get slaughtered if they don't have the appropriate skills and training. So the question of how do we do this is an amazingly important question for our society today. So that's what I want to talk about. So let's just think about building a house for a second, all right? It's a much simpler thing than building an entrepreneurial venture, but let's just think about that for a second. So if I was going to build a house, I'd have a toolbox. I would go out and I'd start building the house. And I would have all these great tools that I was going to work with. And then all of a sudden, along comes Carlos, and he says, you know what you need in your toolbox? You need this new ratchet. And you say, Carlos, what is this new ratchet? And he says, look at this. It kind of goes like this. It goes, you go, wow, that's awesome. That's really useful. And it might have existed before, but you didn't know. But still, Carlos has just brought you some value. And you say, Carlos, that's great. I'll take one of them and I'll put it in my toolbox. And Carlos says, no. By the way, I love Carlos. I'm just using him as a persona here. All right? Carlos says, no. This is the crossing the chasm, blue ocean, lean, pivoting ratchet, and you need no other tool in your toolbox. You don't need a toolbox. You just need our one magical tool, and you'll be successful. That is absurd. But Carlos has terrific incentive to do that if he's a new entrepreneurship guru, because that gap that I was just talking about is a multi-billion-dollar gap. You get in that, even for a little while, you make tons of money. That's no way to run a railroad. That's no way to have a serious profession that we're talking about. Yet that's exactly what's going on. We have this obsession with what the latest new guru is or what the latest new thing that's going on there. And I want to tell you that's the wrong way. That is the wrong way. You probably recognize a lot of these books. You probably don't recognize all of them. But some of them were rigorous work that was later popularized by other people. And that's okay, as long as it's been tested. This, by the way, none of you will recognize because that's my thesis at MIT. My mother read it, and I was very proud of that. But when these ideas come up, you have to have a test of the tools to make sure that they're rigorous so that they should go into your toolbox and they should go into our educational portfolio. And that's what these people are down here. These people are super smart social scientists. I'm a pseudo-intellectual. They are real intellectuals. You know, it's funny because Brad Feld, some of you might know Brad Feld. He's a friend, and he's a startup person. And he went to MIT. And he was getting his PhD, but he left. And he said, oh, my God, Bill, is Ed Roberts still there? Who is this guy right here? This is Ed Roberts. He literally wrote the first book on entrepreneurship that took it seriously. And he goes, oh, that guy made my life miserable for me. And I said, Brad, that's in the past tense for you. That's in the present for me. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because when I come up and I make something for class and I'm going to bring it out to class, he or Fiona, more likely, will sit there and say she'll say in a nice British accent, Bill, that's very nice, but where's the data? Which translated to American means that's complete bullshit. There's no way you're going to teach that in a class at MIT. But that tension is very, very important because if they were going to teach it on their own, they would teach a lot of theory that was kind of high level. On the other hand, if I taught it all by myself, it would be storytelling. So what we need is the combination of those two together. And that's what good entrepreneurship education will be about. And that's what we need to do. What we need to do is have an entrepreneurship education focus that is open systems. The answer isn't one person. Who's the newest guru? That's not the right way. You don't have that. If people are contributing new tools, it's an open source system. There's a common language so that when we talk about it, we're not always reinventing terms. What's your cost of customer acquisition? We should know what that is. The second part of this is it's systems approach. This is not a single tool. It's a toolbox approach. It's a complicated system. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur, nor should entrepreneurship education, but it's transformative. And that's what we need to do. The last thing is we need to combine that practice and theory together. Mens et manis. We need to have both those, the rigor and the practicality. So how do you do that? How do you do that? Here it is. It looks like a game board. Looks like a game board. And Carlos has 100 of these maps for people if you see him afterwards. They're big posters. But so first thing is, why did I make it like this? Because I wanted to make it accessible to everyone. Because people, when they see MIT and they see rigor, they might stop and not do it, and we can't have that. So I really tried to make it prescriptive so it's accessible to people. But even if it's accessible, then people go, well, that's kind of too many steps. Can't you make it like 3? And the answer is no. You can't make it 3. 24 is a good approximation of this part of the entrepreneurial process, which is how do you get market product fit right. And so there are 24 steps. Well, can't you make it a straight line? No. Entrepreneurship isn't a straight line. It's an iterative process, kind of messy at times, and you'll see the iterative loops are incredibly important to it. It is not an algorithm. It is a framework in which to look at the process and building a company. So the good news is there's a beginning and there's an end. And so after you go through it, you know where to start and how to generally move through the process. You start with step 1. Obviously, at step 1, we should start with the product. The answer is, no, you shouldn't. That's a bad idea. You start with this thing that makes a business a business. There's a single and necessary and sufficient condition for a business. It's not a product. It's not an investor. It is not a business plan. It's not a mission statement. It's not real estate. It's not computers. The one single necessary and sufficient condition for a business is a paying customer. Is a paying customer. So we need to focus on who the customer is and then build the business back. I know this because I've failed trying to do it the other way, trying to push out what I thought was best for them because I had some technology. No. Figure out who the customer is, who your technology might be useful for, and then build everything back from there. Modify your technology, build the product, build the service organization, price it, messaging, everything. Hire the right people based on who your customer is. You don't start with the how, nor do you even start with the why, because the why for you is different than the why for me, which is different than the why for a 14-year-old girl who's on her cell phone 500 times a day, right? You have to understand the for whom, then understand the why, and then the how will start to take care of itself, as you'll see in the process. So we have a systematic way that defines how you go through who the customer is. Who are all the potential customers? Which is the one you're going to choose? How do you build an end-user profile? How do you figure out what's the total addressable market? And in each one of these, we have a clear definition of what it is in that step. And then we have examples as to how to do it, and so it should be crystal clear as to how to do it. For instance, total addressable market, we get down to what the units are. It should be dollars per year. And you say that's obvious. Well, it isn't obvious when you read about entrepreneurship. I can tell you because I tried to find books to do this for teach classes. And there was no place that kind of had all this stuff. There was none. Now again, these things are not me. These is proven techniques that have been used from user-driven design by IDEO, been used by Eric von Hippel out of MIT. All this stuff has been proven over time. The point here is bring it all together in an open source type of way. The next thing is, what can you do for your customer? Now that we know who the customer is, why do they need us? Why is there a problem? Why is there an opportunity? And what can we do to map that? We systematically go through that process, and I won't go through all the steps here. You can just do it in the book or do it in the online class or wherever you want. And it steps you through that. That's all fun. What makes you unique, how you set yourself up. The next one is the part where the students love all that stuff. And then this part, especially the engineers, they don't like this step, this set of steps. This is, how does your customer acquire it? And they're like, the customer just should. They're stupid if they don't, you know? No, that's not the right answer. It's a complicated, it's a complicated process to get people to buy things. It's a rational, emotional, social process. And you need to understand who buys the product, who's the jury, and then how do they buy it? And once we understand that, which is a really important element in this, then we look at, can we make money off this product? Well, why didn't you get to that sooner? Because we can't determine that until we know how they make the decision to buy it, because we have to do this thing of how are we going to extract value for the value that we created. And that's the process here of determining what your business model is, how you're going to charge for it. Is it one-time charge? Is it subscription? Is it freemium to premium? Is it advertising? Is it reselling the data? What is it? There's many different ways you can do that, and that's a very important decision. Pricing, frankly, is easy. Once you have that right, you just test some prices. And then we can calculate the lifetime value of a customer in steady state. Lifetime value, or cost of customer acquisition we'll start out. The lifetime value, we're going to determine that over time. Once we know that, then we figure out how we can sell to them. Can we sell direct with salespeople? Do we need indirect people through VARs? Do we need automated systems? Because once we know that in step 18, now we can calculate the cost of customer acquisition. And that is incredibly important and incredibly unknown by most entrepreneurs. I did it wrong completely the first time. There's a science here where you can figure out how much does it cost, or estimate how much does it cost to acquire a customer. And then we have to compare that to the lifetime value of the customer. And then we have to tweak the system to figure out what can we do. That ratio isn't good. How do we do that? And it's the ratio that matters. It's not whether the lifetime value is really big or the cost of customer acquisition is really small. That would be good. But it's the ratio between them that you have to look at. And then we go, how do you build your product? And then we go through, this is more you'd see the Stefan Tomke and kind of the lean startup stuff, which popularized it. How do you run small experiments to build a product efficiently and effectively that customers really want? And you should be well positioned at this point, because you know you've got a product that they want, you know you can do it uniquely, you now know you can make money off it. Now building the product makes a lot of sense. And we don't build the product a lot earlier, because if we build the product a lot earlier, I can tell you this from my experience, but I can also show you research. It was done by Daniel Arelli, where he talks about the IKEA effect. Because as soon as you start building something, you become emotionally attached to that, and you are no longer in inquiry mode, you become in advocacy mode. And you're not going to be very successful if you're in advocacy mode, because you don't listen really well. So you want to stay in inquiry mode as long as you can here, until you feel like, all right, I got this right, let's go into advocacy mode and start selling this thing. So I wrote something called Our Dangerous Obsession with the MVP in TechCrunch, which talked about this, which got everybody all revved up. But I stand completely by it. Just read it, and if the logic doesn't make sense to you and the real world experience doesn't make sense to you, I'd love to hear from you. But I think you'll agree. And then the last thing is, how do you scale the business? So after you've got your beachhead market, what are the additional markets thereafter? I'm not going to try to do the whole course here in 20 minutes. I want to get to questions. But let me just summarize by saying this is a comprehensive yet rigorous approach. It's integrated. It also steps you through in a prescriptive way, but allows you to iterate. It is not an algorithm. Entrepreneurship is not an algorithm. This is one of the problems, why it's so hard to teach. It's not an algorithm. There's not a singular right answer. This is a process, a framework to help you increase your odds dramatically of success. This is why the person who's doing it the third time is more successful than the person doing it the first time, statistically. We talked about that. You don't want to be driven by individual customers, nor do you sit there and be driven by some report you got from Forrester. You're driven by real interactions with real customers that are homogenous, and there's word of mouth. They'll buy a similar product, it's a similar sales cycle, and by the way, there's word of mouth. That's how we do it. We don't just look at one individual customer. We're not customer-driven, we're target market-driven. Nor are we what we call the China syndrome. There's 1.3 billion people in China, and if we make a toothbrush that only 0.1% of the people have to buy, then we're rich. That's what we call the China syndrome. There are no customers sitting in that spreadsheet cell that you have. You need to go get real customers. Which leads us to the next thing is, entrepreneurship is about specificity. It is not about generalities. You got to know exact customers, exact product features. I want to see numbers, cost of customer acquisition. Even if they're not right, which they won't be, at least you're getting specific. You don't win with generalities. And it's an iterative process, as I talked about. And that iterative process is because you're moving fast with focus. We're not trying to do everything. But each time we do something, we get better at it because we learn. So you need to do all three of these things, not just two. And it's an integrated, systematic approach, and where each step helps you be more successful in the next step, but then you may have to go back and update the step before it. I want to go to questions now. It's an action-oriented thing. Oh, let me just say this, is it works. There's the book. It's available on Amazon. I guess it's not as easily available here. It will be coming out in Spanish, hopefully by March of next year, if that matters to you. This is the online course, which you can take. It will restart in December. We actually got it. You can just Google this stuff. Put in edX, MIT Entrepreneurship, edX, my name, or whatever, and it'll come up. It was an interesting story. This was one of the most exciting things I've ever done. We kind of did this, and I didn't believe you could do online courses well until I finished this book, and I said, let's go, let's do it. And we put it out, and we didn't do very much on the marketing side, and we thought, well, let's see who signs up. We put out there, 20,000 people signed up for the course. We're like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And we said, but wait, let's see what it goes down to, because MOOCs, people goes down. It went up. It went up to 55,000 before they cut it off the last time. And so they're rerunning it in December, and now they're doing Entrepreneurship 101 and 102. There's a huge demand for this. All right, so this is the EDP class, which Carlos took at MIT. If any of you want to get the full experience at MIT, full immersion, see the spirit of a pirate, you're welcome to come up there. It's a beautiful place in January. We have this white stuff called snow. You'll enjoy it, trust me. You'll be very focused about working. Right, Antonio? So just to summarize, entrepreneurship is about spirit. At this conference, you're going to get a lot of spirit. But I want you to focus on thinking about the skills and building skills over time. Because if you rush into battle without the appropriate weaponry, without the appropriate skills, it will be a negative experience for you. It's better to kind of do it with some skills, but please think about not just the spirit, but the skills. It's both of them together. Okay, questions, please. Let me see if anybody tweeted. We'll give you first shot at it. New York Times. I guess that's the wrong one. Okay. Entrepreneurship is not an algorithm. That's not a question. Be a pirate. All right, let me ask people if they have questions. Someone has read the 21, Bringing Down the House. Questions, please. Come on now. Did you have a question? Just saying amen, brother. Antonio.
You grade my exam.
Well, I grade your exam. Oh, this is a good one. Seriously creative. Who's seriously creative? Beautiful. That's a good question. That's a good question. All right, Antonio, too late. All right. The question is, isn't the MBA an anti-entrepreneurial degree? All right? Could our degree be the Masters of Business Launching or BA in Piracy? I like you, man. That's really good. Do you know what MBA stands for? No. Management by Arrogance. So here's the deal. I love this, but this is a real challenge for universities. In entrepreneurship, it's the beautiful thing is credentials don't matter. They don't matter. It's all about performance. It's all about performance. So if you walk into a startup and you say, I'm here, I'm the MBA from Harvard, they'll be like, get the F out of here, right? As Guy Kawasaki said, the value of a startup is the number of good engineers you have multiplied by 1 million minus the number of MBAs you have multiplied by 1 million, right? So that's an overstatement. The question becomes as to what value do you bring? And universities are in the business of giving credentials out historically because that was your passport into society, to success in society. But in a startup, it's what can you do? And so we are so focused on what value do we bring. Our competition is not Stanford. It is not Harvard. Our competition is Y Combinator. It's Peter Thiel. It's Techstars. So I have to make an experience that's better than those for them to stay at MIT. And that's what we do. So it's about value. So your question is right. If you're looking at those types of things, the question isn't what credential do they give. The question is what value do they create. All right, Antonio, you better be quick before he comes up.
Okay, so this quick. So how the question is around failure, right? So
yeah.
How do you manage failure, and when do you know that failure is like for real, you need to kind of move on, or when do you know when you need to continue persisting?
So I don't know enough about Puerto Rico, but every culture has this problem about failure. And yet, failure is an integral part of growing, you know? I mean, who's the most famous Puerto Rican athlete? Who's that? Roberto Clemente, that's right, number 21. Yeah. So did Roberto Clemente strike out? He struck out more than any other Puerto Rican, I would bet. I would bet he struck out more than any other Puerto Rican. Anybody want to question that? I bet he did. He's also the greatest Puerto Rican athlete you've ever had. The question isn't whether you're going to fail. The question is how you react to that failure. And I thought it was great. Someone in the campaign said, you know, entrepreneurship without failure does not exist. It does. Innovation-driven entrepreneurship without failure does not exist. It's absurd. It's like a chocolate lava cake that tastes good with no calories. It doesn't exist, right? So failure, how you deal with that is very important. And I think today the interesting thing is that young people understand that. Young people understand that. I have 37 seconds, but I'll tell you a very interesting story. I have 4 sons, and they're very expensive. So any of you are kids, thank your parents. And one of them lives in London, and he travels around with someone from England. And he does business in a startup, and he goes around. And the people in these different countries, they don't want the English guy to talk. They want my son to talk because they don't understand his English. They don't understand English. They understand American English. Does anyone know why that is? Exactly. The movies. Because now there is one language. No longer, when I grew up, I could tell you if someone was from Philadelphia or someone was from New York, someone was from Boston. I mean, think about that. When JFK was president, that guy had a nasty Boston accent, didn't he? Today, who was it ran for president from Massachusetts? Romney. You couldn't even tell, right? Well, he actually wasn't from Boston. So the accents are gone. And everybody listen to that. I'll tell you, when we were in London, we were just in London. I went around to these places. I could have been in San Francisco. I could have been in New York. I could have been in Boston. There's this kind of universal culture of entrepreneurship that's happening throughout the world. And these incubators, accelerators, and that's the common language there. And so they understand this. And look, the people my age screwed up the world. It's up to you young people to fix it now. And I think you're going about it the right way by understanding this failure and being different. It used to be, talking to your point, it used to be you went to a certain school. I went to Harvard. I could get a job for life because I went to Harvard. That doesn't work anymore. The world's all changed. It's a merit-based system. So I believe that this idea of failure, that there's this culture of entrepreneurship, I hope it doesn't override all the different cultures in the world, but I think that that's where you're going to see failure accepted, and I'm very, very hopeful. So my time is up, or what is this? I'm getting more time? No, that's going up. That means I'm over. Well, listen, if you tweet me at this thing, I will answer your questions. I promise. In 140 characters, I'll answer your questions. But I am so proud of Carlos for doing this. This is exactly what the world needs. We need more entrepreneurship. It's going to solve the most intractable problems that we have in healthcare, in government, in medicine, in energy, environment, you name it. And it's also going to create the jobs, as I talked about. So I am on a just hell-bent mission to promote entrepreneurship. So anything I can do to do that, And anything I can do to support efforts like this and people like Carlos, count me in. All right, so, wait, I'm not done yet. Don't start clapping. You want to get me off the stage like that last guy where they start pumping the music, I know. All right. So there it is. So you can tweet me at that, and I will respond to it before I leave Puerto Rico. And you know, again, I am so bullish. I think you in Puerto Rico have a phenomenal opportunity. You have a beautiful place, obviously. You have a great kind of bridge between the United States and Latin America. You've got a very diligent population. You're not blessed with a bunch of oil that makes you lazy. You're going to, I shouldn't, oh, Jesus. Well, look, if there's anyone I haven't insulted, please see me before I go, because I would love to insult you. But anyway, good luck. And you all were the first ones to ever come to an H3 conference. Remember it, because hopefully a year from now and 2 years from now, this thing will be huge. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you very much.